Hey everybody in YouTube land, it's Steve the drummer. Wanted to do my question and answer video for you today. So I've got some great questions from some different people, some different YouTube channels, and so I'll just get right into it. My first question comes from Tony from All Classic Drum Covers. Wanted to take a second out to give a little shout out to Tony. Tony, if you guys don't know, and I'm pretty sure everybody watching my channel does, but Tony runs the All Classic Drum Covers channel on his YouTube channel. He's also got a Google Plus community and a Facebook page. He's a great leader in the YouTube community, and somebody that really goes out of his way to help all of those YouTube drummers out and to promote our channels. And so I wanted to give a big shout out to Tony and say thank you so much for all that you do. And he's got a couple of questions for me. The first one is, when did I start playing the drums? And so I started playing the drums in 1985. I went to see a KISS concert in Fayetteville, North Carolina in January of 1985, and it was kind of a life-changing experience. I was just totally blown away by the show and really enjoyed it. And I went home after the concert, and a friend of mine's little brother had just purchased or actually just gotten a drum set for Christmas. And so I used to go over there and hang out with those guys a lot. And so there was this drum set over there, and I started knocking around on that drum set, and so that's kind of how I got started. Was I went to a KISS concert and was just blown away, and a friend of mine's brother had some drums, so I just went over to his house and started playing. His next question is, did I have any training? And the answer kind of technically is both yes and no. As I said, I went over to my friend's house and played his little brother's drum set. His parents had hired a guy that was playing in a local band to give him drum lessons. Now, I didn't have a drum set, and I didn't have money for drum lessons and any of that stuff, so I used to just kind of hang out and watch his little brother get drum lessons and kind of talk to the guy on the side and ask him some questions and stuff like that. And so and eventually I cobbled together a drum set out of mismatched pieces and things. And I remember actually I had a snare drum and a bass drum that did not match, and a couple of toms that did not match, and I don't even think I had any cymbals. So I took a stack of milk crates and stacked them up and put a little bit of tape on the edge of one of those milk crates, and that's actually what I used as my hi-hat. I placed that to the left of the snare drum, and when I played, I played my right hand on that source as a ride source, which of course it sounded like I was hitting a milk crate, and then my left hand on the snare drum. So that just kind of gives you an idea of what I had cobbled together as to use as a drum set. And I remember when I actually got real cymbals that I was blown away at how different they sounded than what I expected, and they were really loud, and it was kind of hard to control the dynamics between the cymbals and the drum set. So that was a really big learning curve. So anyhow, did I receive any formal training? Technically, no, because basically just talked to a guy that played in a band. And really and truly, my desire at that point was just to play rock and roll songs. So I wasn't like trying to learn the rudiments or anything like that. I was really just focused more on learning some basic beats and some basic fills, and then trying to play along to records. Now, over the years later on, I did take lessons off and on from different people, and learn some things, and actually I've just started taking lessons again here recently. And so anyhow, and then his last question is, what music did I start out learning? And as I indicated, my first concert was a KISS concert, and I was really big, especially at that time, into the whole 80s hair metal thing. I just really thought that stuff was just so cool. And so my first concert was KISS, and the records that I had that I was playing along to were like Motley Crue and Rat and Bon Jovi and Def Leppard and Van Halen and stuff like that. So that's kind of what I was really into, and the musical stuff that I enjoyed, and was I was going to see as many concerts as I could, and those were the records I was playing along to. All right, so my next question comes from Jay Klein. Jay Klein has an awesome YouTube channel. Really enjoy his videos. He recently did a Van Halen cover. I think before that, his most recent cover was a Rush cover. I feel like Jay might be maybe a year or two older than I am, but I feel like we're of a very similar generation with very similar musical tastes. And Jay's got a great sense of humor. He does Aussie J on some of his videos, and he's just a really entertaining guy to watch, and an awesome drummer. So Jay has asked me two questions today. The first one, I think, is kind of showcasing his sense of humor. Is, what is my favorite farm animal? I gotta say, man, I'm not really into farm animals. That's not my thing. But I'm not. I don't actually. Our house backs up to a farm. There is a farm behind us, but I don't think there's any animals per se on the farm. It's just corn, and they alternate between corn and soybeans, I think. But as far as animals go, I do absolutely positively love dogs. About just over 3 years ago, we had the opportunity to adopt a boxer, and she was a boxer mix. Her name was Sally, and she lived with us for almost 3 years. And very, very sadly, and very, very unfortunately, she passed away in June. And that just all came on very suddenly and very shockingly, and was just a really, really sad thing. And in all honesty, I've had a couple of sad events happen this summer, which I won't delve too deeply into, but that's kind of what kicked the whole thing off. And we had adopted Sally from an organization in the Carolinas called Carolina Boxer Rescue, and Carolina Boxer Rescue does an absolutely phenomenal job. They take boxers and boxer mixes from shelters, and they bring them into foster care, and they get them medical treatment, and they feed them and get them all shaped up and healthy, and then adopt them out to families. And they have a little bit of a vetting process for families. You have to fill out an application, and they actually come to your house and sit down and talk to you for a little while. And I've dealt with Carolina Boxer Rescue a little bit over the last couple of years, and just been thoroughly impressed with the work they do. And so, like I say, that's where we got Sally from. And then most recently, we've adopted another boxer mix, and this is a boxer mastiff mix. And our dog is named Jax, and Jax is 4 years old. He's, like I say, he's a boxer mastiff mix, and he weighs 102 pounds, and he's quite a handful. But we are absolutely thrilled to have Jax in our home, and to have dogs in our life. And I've actually started doing a little bit of volunteer work on the side with Carolina Boxer Rescue. I think it's a very very worthwhile cause, and something that I'm very, very passionate about. And so so no farm animals, but I do love my dog. And then his next question is, what is my favorite drum cover that I have played to date? And I've got to say, I've got my channel broken up into a couple of playlists. I've got them broken up by decades. I love the 60s playlist. I love the 70s playlist. I love the 80s playlist. And I love the 90s and beyond. And then I've also kind of got it broken up by genre. I've got a Headbangers Ball section, which is, as Beats by Jay would say, it's more of an old school Headbangers Ball. It's not like the real new heavy intense stuff. I mean, it's like Rat and Dokken and Def Leppard and kind of the whole 80s hair metal version of Headbangers Ball. But nonetheless, I digress. I've got the Headbangers Ball section. I've got a classic vinyl section. I've got a power pop section, and I've got a alternative section. I would say, generally speaking, most of the 80s stuff and most of the Headbangers Ball stuff would probably be some of the favorite stuff that I've had the opportunity to cover. Specifically, in terms of my favorite covers, probably two or three different videos. Foolin', Def Leppard song, I think was one of the first songs that I played that I learned it just specifically for the YouTube channel, and it was just something that I wanted to cover. That I wasn't playing it in a band, and I wasn't covering it on a regular basis, but I wanted to learn it from my YouTube channel, and it was a song that I really enjoyed. And along those lines too, I would have to say that Wanted Dead or Alive, the Bon Jovi cover, was one of my favorites to play, and then also Round and Round by Rat. So I would say probably any one of those three, Foolin', Round and Round, or Wanted Dead or Alive, were my favorite covers that I've done to date. Okay, the next question I've got for you today comes from a gentleman named Mike Luke from Germany. And Mike, a couple things I'd like to say about Mike, man. Number one, Mike, obviously has a very good YouTube channel. Mike is an awesome recording person. I would say that his recording knowledge is really like at engineer level. I mean, I think he is a really super smart guy and really knows his stuff when it comes to drums and to drum recordings. And of course, he uses electronic drums. He uses I believe he took a drum set and an acoustic drum set and converted it to electric. But that is one really smart gentleman when it comes to recording. But then also, as equally so, I think that he is really and truly probably one of my favorite drummers on YouTube. And now he's not recording any drum covers right now because of where he works and proximity to where he lives and proximity to where his drums are. But one of the things that really impresses me about Mike's playing is he really plays with a lot of feeling and a lot of emotion. He is not one of these guys that just blazes around the kit and plays fills for the sake of fills, and that's really not his style. Mike, I think he chooses songs that really showcase his talents in a very positive way, and his gift, I think, is to really play with a great deal of feel. And he's asked me two questions. The first question is, how do I manage to work as a professional pilot and run a drum cover channel? And short answer to that would just be organization. And to kind of digress a little bit further into that, as most of you probably know, I fly airplanes for a living. I'm an airline pilot. And so, generally in any given month, I spend 15 days out of the month working and traveling, and I spend 15 days a month at home, and those aren't broken. It's not like I'm gone 15 days and home 15 days. I usually, when I go to work, I'm gone, usually 4 to 6 days at a time, and then when I come home, I'm usually home for 4 to 6 days at a time. And there are exceptions to that, but that's generally the way things go for me. And that works out to being gone about half the month and home about half the month. And so I have to plan ahead. I have to think ahead, and I generally record a couple of drum covers at a time. When I sit down to record, I'll usually have 3 or 4 songs in mind that I'm trying to get done, and I'll record and mix and get a basically a little batch of covers done, and I'll get all that stuff uploaded, and then I kind of look at the batch as a whole and try to figure out when to post the drum covers. And to some degree, I try to post them in a little bit of a cohesive order. If I was doing 2 a week, and so if I did a heavy metal song on Monday, then I tried to do another heavy metal song on Thursday as well. And if I did a pop song, then I tried to do the pop song on Thursday, or classic rock or whatever. Now I'm scaling back now to where I'm going to do 4, basically a cover a week, 4 covers a month. And so, I'm toying with different ideas about how to organize that, and maybe I know that we're getting into September now, but the next month is October, which is commonly called Rocktober, and so I'm going to try to pick some really good rockin' covers for October. And I've got some other ideas for month-long concepts, but I'm not going to delve too deeply into that. And I will have to say too that in some ways running a YouTube channel is actually easier than like playing in a band. And I do play in a couple of bands as well, but when it comes to playing in a band, I have to coordinate my schedule with the schedules of other members. And that's I have a great deal of time off, but I don't have a great deal of flexibility when I get that time off. And so coordinating my schedule to play in a band is far more difficult than it is to run a YouTube channel and to do drum covers. I mean, basically, for me to do my drum covers, I just need to coordinate with my schedule, and of course my wife's too, because the space that my drums are set up in, half of it I use as my drum area, and the other half of it my wife uses as a little office. And she works from home. She works Monday through Friday from home, and then of course, as with any job, there's other work that has to be done in the evenings and sometimes on the weekends. And so I kind of just have to coordinate with my schedule and my wife's schedule. Whereas playing in a band, I've got 3, 4, 5 other guys, depending on the size of the band, that I need to coordinate with. So anyhow, that's the first question. How do I manage to work and run a YouTube channel. And I would have to say too that that's pretty much standard with everybody. I think everybody has a work schedule that they have to, whatever that may be. I mean, so anyhow, the short answer is organization. And his second question is, have I considered using drum samples, drum software, VSTs, things of that nature? And I would really, really, really like to improve the quality of my drum covers. And I think that there's a handful of things that I could do that would take me in that direction. And probably the biggest single thing that I could do is switch to drum software. And there's a couple of problems that get in the way of that. Number one, quite frankly, I don't own a good functioning computer, good functioning either laptop or desktop computer. And I believe in order to make that successful, I'm going to need more computing power than I actually have. And I'll elaborate on that a little bit more in a later question from somebody else. But, I think that the two biggest limitations that I see for me joining the 21st century and using VSTs is, number one, my lack of computing power, and number two, my lack of computing knowledge. I think people may make an assumption that I have a job flying airplanes, that I'm some smart guy, but that's actually probably as far from the truth as you can possibly get. I'm a product of the 80s. I am really grasping at straws when it comes to 21st century technology, and so I'm blown away by what you can actually do on a computer these days. But I'm also kind of hanging on to a thread here, trying to figure out how to make everything work. So I think eventually I will probably get to drum software, but that's not anywhere in the near future. And my biggest obstacles are my computing power and my computing knowledge, or actually lack thereof, for both. Alrighty, so my next question today comes from Stefa Bennet, and I've got to admit I don't know much about Stefa. I'm trying to connect some dots and do a little bit of association here. I believe, and I could be wrong, and if I am wrong, Ms. Bennett, I genuinely apologize, but I'm trying to give a little back in terms of, people are giving me questions, and so I'm trying to shine a little bit of a light back at the people that are giving me these questions. And so I believe you are the wife of Earl the Hammer Bennett, which Earl, excellent drummer, knowledgeable guy, and really a great channel to check out. And Stefa has a channel with devotionals, lots of really good inspirational stuff. And I believe that she worked as a writer, possibly for Modern Drummer magazine, and may have recorded an album as well. So anyhow, next question from Stefa. Please, by all means, go check her out. She asked to elaborate a little bit on the differences between playing on an electric drum set and an acoustic drum set. And I think this is an awesome question. I'm really glad that you asked this question. And my thoughts are these, honestly. In the 21st century here, I think that well, number one, both are very important tools and to be utilized in music. They're both tools, and you need both tools in your arsenal. And I think in the 21st century, if you're not incorporating electronics in some way into your setup, be it a full-on electronic drum set, or some triggers, or a hybrid drum set, or a sample pad, or something along those lines, I think that you're kind of missing the boat here a little bit. I'm blown. I took about a 10-year layoff and for work, and when I started playing the drums again, and I started calling my friends up and saying, "Hey, listen, I'm playing the drums again." Virtually everybody that I called said, "Well, did you?" And I told them, I'm starting to play the drums again, and I bought a drum set. Virtually every one of them asked me if I bought an acoustic kit or an electric kit, and I was blown away by that, because I thought to myself, "Well, I bought acoustic, of course, duh. I mean, that's what everybody does." But later on, a turn of events kind of happened that led me to also buy an electronic kit. My wife started working from home, and I wanted to get a second drum set for the house that was quieter, and so I bought an electronic kit to go with my acoustic kit, and blah blah blah. But I would have to say that in this day and age, using triggers and using samples and things of that nature, I just think that that's a vastly important tool and vastly important technology to get into. And I would also have to say that I think that I've seen or heard a couple of things that have really been kind of telling to me about the state of live entertainment and music and what have you. I've had two separate recreational trips with my family that I've had lots of opportunities to check out live bands. First off, I went on a cruise last January, and on the cruise ship there was bands performing on the cruise ship. And then secondly, myself and my wife went to Las Vegas for a couple of days last month, and I like music, and so we checked out live music in a couple of different venues there. And on the cruise ship, the band on the cruise ship used electronic drums exclusively. When I was milling about in Las Vegas and going and checking out all these different venues and different bands and stuff like that, I would say that 2/3 of the bands, especially in the smaller venues, were using electronic drums. So I think that we are reaching a point where people are realizing the benefit of volume control with electronic drums, and it's becoming much more mainstream, I guess, to kind of coin a phrase or whatever. And additionally, I'd have to say, looking back at viewing live entertainment, going and seeing live entertainment, I remember, and I want to say it was the late 80s or maybe the very early 90s, I was at the beach with a bunch of friends, and we went out one night, and we saw something at the time which was totally new, which was basically a machine playing music without words, and you had a microphone and you could sing karaoke. And I remember thinking, and that was like singing karaoke. That was like a brand new concept, and I remember thinking to myself, that will never work. That will never last. Who in the world would want to do that? And you fast forward to the late summer, early fall of 2018, karaoke's everywhere, and going to see a live band it takes a little bit of work to find some bands. So I believe that similarly with electronics, we're kind of in a shift here where people are recognizing the benefits of sound control through through using electronic drums, and so I think that unless you're talking about larger venues, I think that that's just really becoming more prevalent. And I also have to cite a recent episode of Jeff Holden has a live show now, and he was interviewing Beats by Jay. And one of the things that Jeff said, one of the comments that he made that I just found incredibly compelling, because Jeff owns lots and lots of vintage drums, and he's a very much so a hard, what I perceive as a hardcore acoustic drummer. And he stated in that show that 70 out of 100 shows last year he played on electronic drums, just simply for the volume control. And so I got to say that I think that electronics are really really coming on strong. But I would also say that by the same token, there's absolutely no replacement whatsoever for acoustic drums. Acoustic drums articulate in a far more dynamic way than electronics do. When you hit, and the electronics have come a long way. Don't get me wrong, and they're trying to develop pads, and they're going from analog samples to digital samples, where depending on how you hit the pad and where you hit the pad, you get different sounds out of it. But at the end of the day, there's absolutely, in my mind, no replacement for the articulation of an acoustic drum. And I play, I use my electronic drum set at home for practice, and I record my drum covers with that. And I use an acoustic drum set whenever I practice with a band or whenever I play with a band. And I can tell you, switching back and forth between the two, there's just no way to get that articulation at this point, to my knowledge, from an electronic drum set. And I would have to say that, when you play acoustics, you can use a stick versus a brush. You can use a stick versus a brush versus hot rods. You can use really lightweight sticks. You can use heavy sticks, and all these different things cause the drum to react in a different fashion and to articulate in a different fashion. And you really can't get that out, or you can use a mallet too. You really can't get that at this point out of electronics. So I think at the end of the day, acoustic drums still have a big leg up over electronic drums in terms of their versatility. However, I think that electronic drums are really coming on strong and becoming the wave of the present, and probably more so the future. And when it comes down to this articulation, I think that's most evident in styles of music that require more finesse, in particular jazz music. There you can't. I don't think you can really play authentic jazz on an electronic drum set. Some of the acts that we saw when we were in Vegas, my wife's a big R&B fan, and so there was an artist, Brian McKnight, and we went to see him, and he was at a big venue at the Hard Rock, and that, of course, was a big live band, and there was a drummer playing acoustics, but he had some electronics mixed in. He had some samples mixed in. Additionally, we went to this place called Carnival Court. It's a really big venue on the Strip, and they had different bands there every day and every night. And that a size venue like that, they're still using a full-on acoustic kit. But then we went to like a hotel bar, and they had a band with an electronic drum set. And I saw another venue where it was a country bar actually, and the guy was playing what looked like acoustic drums, but the acoustic drums had triggers in them, and he was playing electronics. And then last but not least, we saw we saw two tribute bands. One was a Beatles tribute band, and they were using acoustic drums, and I saw a tribute to the Rat Pack. I'm drawing a blank here. Frank Sinatra and Sammy Davis Jr. and Dean Martin, and they were backed up by a live band, and that guy was using acoustic drums. And I think that was in a very small room, but I think to play that authentic jazz, you really need acoustic drums to articulate the different sounds that you're trying to get. So anyhow, that's my thoughts on the differences between acoustics and electronics. Both are valuable tools. But they're different. I mean, honestly, it's two different balls of wax. All right, guys, this video is going incredibly long. I don't think I'm capable of giving a short answer or telling a short story. So I say all that to say I'm going to split this into two parts. That concludes part one, and part two will be coming out as soon as you can say part two. So anyhow, you guys have a great day. Thanks for stopping by, and please check out part two.